What's going on, guys? Sorry I'm late. You guys that are used to me by now probably know that you got to give me a 5 to 10 minute window, but I apologize. This time I'm a solid 20 late, so I apologize about that for everybody that was here on time. You should know better. Let's put it that way. You should know I'm going to be 5 to 10 minutes late at this point, so you should know better. Anyways, thanks for coming by. We had a good stream last night between me and Mike, and then Randall came on and Jesse came on just for 20 minutes or so. I thought it was really fruitful. It's going to be something that we should try to make a habit of, not make it a one-time thing, make a habit of it. So I think we're going to, like I said, go through this study that I have for my church. It's a course I'm taking with a study group, and we'll pick out a couple chapters, and that way I'm not the only one who prepared ahead of time, but you guys can or other people can prepare too, and then that way when we come together it's kind of just like we all have something already, and it's not putting somebody else on the spot. So I'm the only one who had the advantage of to look at things, and that way I look like I know what I'm talking about because I spent an hour researching it before the show, but then whoever's up here just looking at it in the moment. So to be fair, and also just because I think other people will enjoy it. I know, Mike and other people, a lot of you guys enjoy breaking the scriptures down. So, I'll, give you guys what topics, what chapters I'm thinking about doing, and we'll get into it like that too in the future. So, again, thanks to everybody, Dimples, Chris, Troy, Babel, Arctic, Timberwolf. I'll put the link in the chat for you guys that, want to come on, and we'll get going. But as you can see by the title of the show, the main topic we're going to try to start on, and obviously we're always able to veer off in whatever direction the conversation takes us. But we're going to start talking about, what's the importance of God's law being written down, and when was it written down, and when was it lost, and when was it found, and how did that affect the people when it was given to them? And how did it affect the people when it was lost and then found? And how did they react? And what does that say about the people, in the manner they received it? And how do we remember those people today? Just as an example for us. And also what's taught, not just in the 10 Commandments in Exodus 20, but within some of the more in-depth laws, the reiterating of the 10 Commandments in Deuteronomy 5, but then the expounding upon within 5 and 6, where we learn the most important commandment: Hear, O Israel, our Lord, our God is one. Love the Lord with all your heart, love God with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind, all your strength. And, Leviticus 19:18 obviously says, love thy neighbor like thyself. But we can also, see it's implied and deduce it from the 10 Commandments and other laws prior. So, we'll get into that. And then we'll see within, Deuteronomy chapter 6, I think it's verses 7 and 8, I want to say. Verses 6 and 7, where God tells Moses for the Israelites to write the law on the doorposts, to constantly be talking about it with their children, and just always have it on their mind and their heart. I think they have some verses saying write it on their hand, things of that nature. So basically God giving direct, information to us on how we should, use the word of God, which is constantly do what we're doing with it, which is speak about it, analyze it, share it with each other, break it down, so on and so forth. So, we'll get into the scriptures in a minute. We'll give it 5 minutes to see if, anybody wants to hop on. I don't know if Chris is, capable, or if he's got work, or the kids, or Dimples, or Troy, or anybody, Babel, anybody that wants to hop on, anybody that comes in, obviously. It's always welcome. I have invited a couple new people, so maybe we'll get some of them on the show soon. Some people from Jamie's channel and, just other YouTube, forums like this. Obviously, we're not alone. This is, the conscious community is a network of people who, enjoy doing this. And, we're going to try to do our best over here to, not just throw stones at other people, because that can become a habitual thing on some channels of just, doing reaction videos and attacking how other people go about things. that doesn't really help us. So we're going to try to improve ourselves, be positive, stay positive, and try to add to what we have as far as information and things we can adopt into our own lives. So I don't want to just be pointing the finger at other people, because it's like if you're playing basketball and all you're going to do is talk about how the other person doesn't have a jump shot, they don't know how to dribble, they're slow, they can't dunk, that doesn't make you a better basketball player. Yeah, it all could be factual, but it doesn't make you a better basketball player. So if we're trying to be better humans and closer to God, we have to do what we're going to try to do over here more than anything, which is improve and just add to ourselves. Like I said, the goal is just, if you add one thing a show, that's fruitful. So, if you add 100 things, great. But if you added one thing, then at least I can say it may have been worth your time. You know what I mean? Just instead of watching TV or Netflix or something that might not have gotten you closer to God, if you can add one thing or, something vital from one of these shows, then more power to, everybody involved. And that's the ultimate goal. So, I do my best to try to prepare some stuff and get you guys some information too. So I hope you guys appreciate, the time I put in, but of course I enjoy doing it and it's mutually beneficial. So I definitely do it. I would do it regardless if I was doing the show or not. I would do it just for myself. So anyways, we'll get into some stuff here. So I'll start off with the fact that the Ten Commandments was the first time God wrote down any laws that I know of. I may be incorrect. Somebody else can correct me on this if you're in the chat or you want to come up on the panel. But preparing for the show and thinking about it, I believe pretty positive that God didn't have anybody write even one thing down. Yes, altars were built in Genesis, sacrifices were made, so on and so forth. God spoke with people directly through their minds, or directly, through angels. But nothing was written. We have to bear in mind the book of Genesis wasn't written for Abraham to read. It wasn't written for Jacob to read. Joseph was in Egypt. He wasn't reading the book of Genesis. So where in the Bible do we see the characters in the Bible, the people that are actually in the Bible, have the ability to read God's word? Where's the first time we see it? And it's, the 10 Commandments in Exodus 20, when, God writes on 2 stone tablets the 10 words. That's what, some Hebrew Jewish people will call it, the 10 words, or, more commonly for a lot of Christians, the 10 Commandments. So what's interesting within that is when we look at the 10 Commandments, what we see is some of them, and specifically the one that stands out the most, the Sabbath, is spoken of in Genesis in the creation story. So we see that keeping the seventh day holy as a day of rest, which is one of the 10 Commandments, as most people are aware, that was something that God did within the beginning story of Genesis and Genesis 2. So if you go to Genesis chapter 2, which we'll start going to the scriptures, I was just giving it a minute because I'm trying to give some people some time if they want to hop in. But I see Jamie's live too, so I know some people are over there too. So, I'll carry the show for my audience here while we're waiting or see what's going on over there. But even if it's a smaller audience, people can watch it down the line. Yeah, I agree, Dimples. I agree. That's what I saw too when I was trying to prepare for this. I think the 10 Commandments were the first time that anything was actually written. Like I said, the characters in Genesis did not have access to anything written. The Israelites clearly were in slavery in in Egypt. And, they were just called the Hebrews, the Israelites at that point. They didn't have anything written. God did the plagues, freedom, and then that's where everything started to become established. So, we'll get into showing that, and we'll just start off with Exodus 20, and we'll go from there, guys. So, hope you guys enjoy. Hope you guys learn something. And like I said, there's some other incidents after this original law in the Ten Commandments and Deuteronomy that Moses gives in Deuteronomy 5 and 6, we'll see that again the laws are rewrote because the people that were in the wilderness over the age of 20 didn't believe God when they sent the spies into the land of Canaan, the land flowing with milk and honey, because 10 of the 12 spies gave a bad report saying, oh no, the Nephilim are there. They make us look like grasshoppers. The people are too powerful. The nations, the kings will overwhelm us. Only Caleb and Joshua, Caleb from the tribe of Judah, the son of Jephunneh, and Joshua from the tribe of Ephraim, the son of Nun. He was obviously the leader after him and Caleb, but Joshua primarily took the lead because Moses had Joshua take the lead, but only Caleb and Joshua believed God, that he could handle, destroying all the enemies in the land of Canaan. So that's why when Joshua in the book of Joshua, chapter 8, gets into the land of Canaan, he has to rewrite the law because all the people that came in weren't circumcised. Joshua had to circumcise them after they crossed the Jordan River, all the men, obviously, not the women, obviously. And he had to rewrite the law. So we'll go through all this. And then we'll also show two other times where the book of the law was lost and then it was found. Reminiscent of the parables we were reading yesterday in Luke 15 about the lost sheep or the lost coin or the prodigal son. Using the term lost and found is just something I chose. It's not in the scripture. It just says the book of the law was lost. But when they do find it, great change does occur and righteous people step up and enforce the law, which when they see it, their hearts melt because they weren't aware of, what they were doing wrong, essentially. So we'll see that in 650 BC with Josiah, King Josiah. And we'll also see it, and these are approximate dates because Josiah reigned 31 years. So it's approximately, 650 BC to 610 BC-ish. And, 640 to 609 BC or something is 31 years. But I'll just say 650 BC so you guys have a rough idea. But so Josiah, 650 BC, and then also Ezra and Nehemiah around 450 BC with the Persians. So those are two separate incidents. So we'll have Moses given the law in Exodus and Deuteronomy. We'll have Joshua in the land of Canaan. Then we'll have Josiah around 650 BC. And then we'll also analyze Ezra and Nehemiah in rebuilding of the temple around 450 BC in the Persian reign. So that's what we're going to get into. That's the plan. It's interesting. Dimple's talking about some of the Dead Sea Scrolls. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely writings. I'm not going to dispute historically, scholarly. There's been writing way before in other cultures. We know other cultures, the Sumerians. I'm not saying the Hebrew people or the Israelites invented writing. The whole point of this show is not to say that because we know that's not accurate. That's not scholarly. What we're going to say is these are the times that God himself wrote something down. I don't think there's a time in history prior to this where we have proof of the one true living God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and Jesus Christ writing their word. Before this, Jesus the Father and the Holy Spirit, wherever they wrote their word anywhere else before this. Granted, they probably were influencing certain individuals and they wrote down things, but we don't know where, those writings are, is what I'm saying. I'm sure somebody, for all we know, Abraham had things written down. For all we know, Noah wrote some stuff down. But what I'm saying is we don't have those writings. Enoch could have wrote something down. Abel could have wrote something down. So we don't have those writings is the point. So what we see in the Bible is Exodus 20 and the Ten Commandments being the starting point for when the first time in history God, writes his laws down. So that's what we're going to have to base our study on. We're going to have to trust the Bible more than anything else. Can we speculate and say, yes, God maybe helped write Gilgamesh, or God maybe helped, establish mathematics or writing in Samaria. God could have done it in Egypt. God could have had his place in a thing here or there for sure, and I'm sure did. But again, we want to just stick to the Bible and what it tells us for definitive evidence. We're not going to play the speculation game here. Um, yes, exactly. By Dimples, I agree. And like I said, guys, feel free to come up if you want. What's going on, Sherry? Nice to see you as always. I always appreciate your participation and just your insight too. I know when you say something, it's always helpful. So I pay attention to whatever you guys help me out with too. So don't think I don't see the comments. So I appreciate everybody that doesn't come on because of the technical issues or whatever people have going on. Because I know some people have tried to come on and it's just technical issues. But I also, like Dimples is saying right now, I appreciate the comments because I do see them and I try to use them in my information because I'm obviously just doing my best up here. I'm not preparing for every show for a month here. I'm just thinking about things for an hour or two or a day or two, and then we're going into it and we'll take it from there type of thing. So that's what we're going to do. And again, I almost wrote a book before I started writing a book, just a little precursor for you guys about this topic. I almost wrote a book before I started writing it, like 20 pages, and then I just gave up on it. I said, nobody's going to care. I lost my motivation, whatever it may be. This was 15, 20 years ago, but I was going to call it Writing Man's Evolutionary Dominance, or Humanity's Evolutionary Dominance, to be more, inclusive of women. So think about it. Writing Humanity's Evolutionary Dominance. And if you really think about it, it's really true. What other animal on earth writes? Is there another animal on earth that writes? Yeah, we see monkeys or certain, birds might, make markings on wood, and animals know how to record things in different ways. Some will urinate and remember where something is. We're not talking about that. We're talking about actually written history. There's no other animal that writes things, only human beings. So I was going to write a book, writing humanity's evolutionary dominance, because I believe our writing, allows us to remember. So if somebody learned how to kindle a fire instead of having to, depend upon oral history, because sometimes everybody could have died, and you might not have somebody to talk to. But if you could look at the wall and see what was written down on the cave wall, or a tablet, or papyrus, a piece of paper, whatever it was, then you can build, generation to generation. And that's why I think human beings technologically are so dominant. We're the most dominant species because of, a lot of things, but our ability to write is very, very important within that. So that speaks to this topic. What's going on, Pam? Um, so we can't underestimate the bottom line, that writing is really, really underrated as far as, well, where are we at today? And all we got to do now to really think about it is think about how blessed we are to have the internet and all the written history that we can just type in Google at any moment. We could just type in to Google, what's the answer to this? Tell me how to cook chicken Alfredo, and get 100 recipes. And, so the power of information is really easy to understand, especially if you think about how, lost we were compared to, where we're at now with Google, when we had to go into encyclopedias or go to the library to find sources. When I'm sure a lot of us growing up had to do that, because I'm 39, and we're still from a generation where you were doing a book report at school, you went and got an encyclopedia, and you didn't Google the information and get it off the internet. You went and got an encyclopedia. So we're all old enough, or at least most of us, I'm sure, are old enough to remember that when we did our school, we had to get an encyclopedia and do things. So just think about the power of writing. But it's what was I going to say? It's very underrated. It's we think about guns, we think about the fact we made fire, We think about a lot of things, but we really underestimate the fact that we can write things down, because how do all these things get passed on, and how do we build from generation to generation and not lose things? And writing plays a big role in that. So I don't want to beat that point to death. I'm sure you guys got it. You can understand it. But anyways, are you talking to Jamie, Diane? I don't even Dimples or somebody might be named Jamie. I thought you were talking about Jamie Russell. I was like, he's got a show going live right now. Okay. But all right, here we are. So here we are, Exodus 20. And before we get started on Exodus 20, a relevant aspect of it is who was getting these 10 commandments? Was it just Moses, or was it Moses and Aaron? Because if you go back right before the 10 commandments in Exodus 20, you see that God tells Aaron to go up the mountain with Moses. So that's another thing that I don't think we can decide one way or the other in the Bible. It's not clear. So right here we see, God saying to Moses, and Moses said to the Lord, the people can't come up to Mount Sinai, for you yourself warned us, saying, set limits around the mountain and consecrate it. And the Lord said to him, go down and come up, bringing Aaron with you. But do not let the priests and the people break through to come up to the Lord, lest he break out against them. So Moses went down to the people and told them. So one thing that it's not clear, because this is all we have, and then it gets into the 10 commandments and God giving, Moses the 10 commandments. But we see that God's telling him to bring Aaron up the mountain with him. So it's undecided to me, where Aaron exactly was. And the Bible, unfortunately, doesn't give us a very clear answer, because we just got to see this verse and then kind of make our own conclusions. So clearly God is saying, bring Aaron up with you, come down, go down and come up, bringing Aaron with you. So, and then it just gets right here. So we'll just read to see if there's any point we could see where Aaron is or not. The 10 commandments. And God spoke all these words, saying, I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. So right now we see that all we saw is, in Exodus 19:24, God saying, bring Aaron up with you. And the next thing we see is the 10 commandments being given. So in my estimation, I got to say that, Aaron was up on the mountain with Moses when he was getting these. That's the best guess I have. But again, it's up for debate or speculation. And God spoke all these words, saying, I'm the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. All right. And I could just go through and read all these, but I'd rather just give you guys my estimate. Not my estimate, my analysis on it. So the thing is, Joshua also went up the mountain with Moses too. When Moses went up for 40 days and 40 nights, God told Joshua to go up the mountain, but it doesn't say that Joshua went into the cloud when Moses did the 40 days, 40 nights. So it's kind of unclear also with Joshua. Where would Joshua go when he was up the mountain? Like, was he eating food and drinking water? Where was he for the 40 days when Moses, was fasting? So that's just another side note to parallel it with the fact that, like I said here, I think Aaron, is with Moses. But I think Aaron was more involved than Joshua. I don't know what Joshua did on the mountain. He must have had food and water. So it's interesting. Very interesting, honestly. I'll show you that right now, just so you can parallel it with what I'm talking about here about Aaron going up in Exodus 19:24. So I'll just show you Exodus 24 so people understand what I'm saying. Again, just like how God told Aaron to go up with Moses in Exodus 19:24 and then just started saying the 10 commandments, we see here in Exodus 24:12, the Lord said to Moses, come up to me on the mountain and wait there, that I may give you the tablets of stone with the law and the commandment which I have written for their instruction. So Moses rose with his assistant Joshua. So again, just like with Aaron going up the mountain with Moses to get the 10 commandments initially, it's unclear where Joshua was exactly, because all we see is this. So Moses rose with his assistant Joshua, and Moses went up into the mountain of God. But it says, Moses rose with his assistant Joshua. So it's, implying Joshua went with him. But then it says, and Moses went up to the mountain of God. So where's Joshua, in this situation? Because this is when Moses ends up fasting for 40 days and 40 nights, too. So let's see right here. Moses entered the cloud and went up on the mountain, and Moses was on the mountain 40 days and 40 nights. So for me, that's just a side note I wanted to point out because I thought it was relevant. Like, well, where's Aaron? When God's given the Ten Commandments, it seems like he's with Moses. And also, where's Joshua when Moses decides to go into the cloud? Obviously, God called him into the cloud, but, where's Joshua? Because Aaron's not, on the mountain here, but Joshua it seems to be because it says rose with his assistant Joshua. And it doesn't say he left Joshua with Aaron and her. So, just a side note there. Just wanted to point that out because I think it's relevant. Sometimes people will say it was just Moses alone, but if you actually read the Bible, you see Aaron was commanded in Exodus 19:24, and then you see it said Moses rose with his assistant Joshua. And we know if you read, these chapters and just Deuteronomy in general, Joshua was, guarding the tent of meeting after Moses went in and out. He'd stand by it. Like Joshua would follow Moses everywhere. Joshua was his assistant. That's like the best word we have in the translation here. So, it's an interesting thought because it's undecided. I'm sure the Jewish people probably have more tradition and history, or there's maybe some apocrypha talking about, what Joshua did when Moses went into the cloud. Like, did he already have food or what? Who knows? It's undecided. But like I said, this is in the Ten Commandments. What I thought was real interesting. The one that stood out to me out of the 10. I spoke on this briefly the other day, but the Sabbath, came from Genesis 2. So I don't know what other of the 10 commandments we can see explicitly said. Like, granted, we know adultery, was already bad. It was already immoral because when Abraham would go places with Sarah and call her his sister instead of his wife, and then the people, the kings, would find out Sarah's actually married to Abraham, they would say, well, why didn't you tell me? I could have, accidentally had, laid with her, and then God would have punished me. So it's clear that the people in Genesis already understand, adultery is wrong, stealing is wrong, coveting is wrong. The Ten Commandments are moral laws that are just, common sense almost, to an extent. So we see in Genesis the people practicing, thou shalt not kill, obviously, Cain and Abel, and just in general, we get it. We're human beings. We know, we all have that, okay, I probably shouldn't kill that person, thought. So the only 10 commandment that I see, and this is again something I'd like to have discussions with other people on because I haven't studied this for a month or something or put too much thought into it, but the only one I actually see written down in Genesis is the Sabbath, and that's written in Genesis 2. So we'll see it here. So right here in Exodus 28, the 10 commandments: remember the Sabbath day, keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, you or your son or your daughter, your male servant or your female servant, or your livestock, or the sojourner who is within your gates. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all. So this is referencing the Genesis. For in the 6 days the Lord Well, Chris, I'll answer you in a second. So let me just read this. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea and all that is in them, and rested on the seventh day. Therefore, the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. What my point is, Chris, is I know you probably already understood my point, but I'm saying God giving a command explicitly to you know I don't know what I'm saying is obviously the point of the show is they're not written down anywhere, but it's implied. Like Cain and Abel teaches us not to murder. So that's in Genesis, like a lesson on do not murder, or just the fact that people were being violent in the days of Noah, so on and so forth, or the fact that they tried to kill Joseph, but they didn't kill him. Obviously, they just sent him to Egypt. But we see like murder like being implied to be bad. But what I'm saying is, show me where God said murder is a bad thing, because nothing was written down. It was all just implied. Like I said, adultery is implied. So that's clear. It's in Genesis. Like, I'm not saying I could go through Genesis, I'm sure, and find all 10 of these core principles for sure. Not trying to covet Esau's, Jacob and Esau, their sheep, their property, other people in the property. Like, I could go through Genesis and find all 10 of these things occurring, I'm sure. What I'm saying is, can you show me where they're written down? Can you show me where it says thou shalt not commit adultery, like as a command from God to a specific person? You know what I mean? That's what I'm looking for. And the only one I saw was the Sabbath. It was Genesis 2. So I'll just, give you an example of what I'm trying to say is like, show me where God out of his own mouth isn't just speaking to people, but is writing it. So the seventh day, God rests. Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the host of them. And on the seventh day, God finished his work that he had done, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work that he had done. So God blessed the seventh day and made it holy, because on it God rested from all his work that he had done in creation. And now that I'm talking about this, I feel silly because Jesus quoted Genesis for the divorce. So I guess we could say adultery is demonstrated in that. So that's the second one I'll say that I can clearly see God wrote, because Jesus quoted Genesis when he talked about one man, one woman, what God has joined together, that no man separate. Man and woman should become one flesh. What God has joined together, that no man separate. Jesus quotes that in Matthew 19. So I guess there's two of the 10 commandments I can make the argument that are clearly written, because adultery is something that Jesus spoke on in Matthew 19 about divorce. So let's find that verse for people. They made it one flesh. Made it one flesh. I know there was. I want to say it was in one somewhere. 128. No. Okay. All right. I know Jesus quotes it in. Well, yeah, Chris. Like I said, I see the Sabbath and I can see adultery clearly, but like I said, they're all implied. Like I can make the argument, murder's implied, stealing's implied, but I'm saying I want to see God, saying it, which, if he just says it to one person, I don't know if that's what I'm talking about. I don't know. This is just like a thought experiment. This isn't like it's either in there or not. It's just a way to look at the scripture. It's an interpretation or a perspective. Show this verse. All right, I guess it's the next chapter. But yeah, of the 10 commandments, I think the Sabbath and adultery are the only ones I see written. That's just me not thinking for hours on it. Just a quick, that seemed like that's what it was. But all right, I know I'm missing the verses here. No, I know, Chris. I already covered that. I already said they're all implied, man. They're all implied, but you have to understand what I'm saying. They have to be written. I'm saying I don't see where God wrote it in Genesis. They're all implied. Like I said, adultery was implied with Sarah. Stealing was implied. Murder was implied with Abel. Like they all existed from the first creation. From the second God created everything, all 10 of these existed. The point is, this is the first time they're getting written down and given to people. But I also want to show, which ones in Genesis were specifically counted, as, utmost importance, like the Sabbath being in Genesis 2 written down is an utmost important. So right here, like, you know, show me where murder is, like in this way. That's what I'm asking. If you can do it, I'm sure, I want to see it, because I'm sure this is a thought experiment. Show me where God wrote, just like he wrote the Sabbath, show me where he wrote murder or stealing. Like, I'm not saying these didn't all exist. They all existed. God didn't change. Concepts are the same, but the whole point of the show here is to show, like, the Exodus 20 is the first time things are being written down. So I'm trying to show, if we go back to Genesis, where, some of these things were prioritized and written. I'm not saying one's greater than the other, but just, interestingly, God did write some down, but didn't write others down. That's the point. This we spoke about with Mike the other day, but this murder word, the Hebrew word rasa, R-A-S-A, as you guys can see on the screen here, it also covers negligent murder. So it's like I was saying with Mike, if you guys saw the show the other day, God's treating it not just as murder, but negligent murder. So if you get drunk and you get in your car and you drink and drive and you kill somebody, then God's using this "thou shalt not murder" in that regard. And you can see the footnote here. The Hebrew word also covers causing human death through carelessness or negligence. So if you get drunk, get in your car, kill somebody, you don't call that murder. But this Hebrew word rasa, that is in the Ten Commandments, for that you shall not murder, is covering that death. It's using it as the same as a premeditated murder. So for instance, if you were to get in your car and run somebody over and kill them, premeditated intentional murder, well, what's the difference if they suffered the exact same as somebody that accidentally got drunk, got in their car, ran somebody over? That's just for moral purposes and hypothetical purposes. Say the person died by the exact same pain and suffering in the same manner. The car hit him at the same angle and killed him in the same way. Well, that's why God in the Ten Commandments here, with "you shall not murder," and the Hebrew word used, covers the negligent death, because we don't know for sure, but the result is identical to the family. They lost their loved one. Somebody died. So we have to think about that, because a lot of people will use this as just "you shall not murder," but really, like I said, this footnote's here for a reason, because the Hebrew word was making sure people were aware. If you killed someone carelessly, it was just as well, I won't say just as, I don't know what God's going to do when he judges, but it was covered in the word. It was under the same word, as far as, it was implied. So we see this word Messiah here, and one of the definitions you'll see is accidental. Granted, most times it's intentional murder, because think about it. How many times are there accidental murders in the Bible? It's kind of hard to find incidents of that. So that's why you only see this accidental in the definition here. And then most times it's not accidental, because just think about it. How often are there accidental deaths? They're not very common. So if you go through the lexicon, you're going to see that it's more often used for intentional murder. But it makes perfect sense, because tell me which deaths in the Bible were accidental. There wasn't many people that took too many sleeping pills and overdosed by accident, or you know what I mean. The accidental deaths are few and far between. I can't even tell you one off the top of my head. I would have to think about it. I'm sure there probably is one in there, but the Hebrew word in the Ten Commandments for murder covered accidental or negligent killing, and that's also demonstrated within the Hebrew laws for restitution. It shows you, like, if you're aware, if your ox or your animal kills somebody or hurts their property, how much you got to reimburse them, and so forth and so on. So if you read the other laws, you'll see this like principle of like still holding people accountable for not just intentional things but negligence is part of God's nature, and that's just important to think about, because a lot of people will read "Thou shalt not murder" and not think about it as it is actually written. So let me see what else we have here as far as Exodus 20 breakdowns. Okay, so let me show you. It's Genesis 127 and 224 for the adultery. So right here, you shall not commit adultery. It's Genesis. I was just looking for it earlier, but to show you what Jesus referenced in Matthew 19 as far as why you shouldn't have multiple wives. Um, just one man, one woman, and you shouldn't divorce. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created him. And then 224 tells you, man and woman become one flesh. What God has joined together, that no man separate. So 224. Therefore, a man shall leave his father and his mother and hold fast to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. And the man and his wife were both naked and were not ashamed. Okay. So, right here, 224 tells you, you know, other translations I think will have the what God has joined together that no man separate. Let's check the KJV quick. See, there we are. Well, that's the point, Chris. Murder and killing definitely are two different things, because one can just be negligent, and murder is intentional most times. But killing, you could just accidentally kill somebody by negligence, and that's why the Hebrew word that we have translated murder covers both murder and killing. So you should look at, like I said, in the interlinear what the Hebrew word rasah means, because it's not just talking about intentional murder. That's why I just went to the lexicon to show it, because it has accidental in the definition, and it's not me who made the footnote there. So some scholar obviously is the one who made the point, and I have the ESV Bible and had the footnote, so that's what made it stand out to me, because my ESV Bible had this same footnote that Bible Hub has right here. So it's the scholarly consensus on what the word that they are translating for murder means, Chris. It's not my opinion on it. It's the scholarly consensus on what the translated word rasa means. It means murder, but also careless killing. So that's why I just brought it up. You know, there is a difference between murder and killing, but that's the point. The word in the Ten Commandments covers both. God didn't say murder. God said rasa, the Hebrew word. He didn't say murder. He said rasa. So we got to keep that in mind. He didn't say English words here. Accidental, right here, verse 3. Like I said, there's not many accidental deaths in the Bible. So when you go through and look for, like, well, it's usually used for murder, that's just because the nature of the fact that there's not many accidental deaths. I'm sure there is an accidental death somewhere. And if I thought about it, I'm sure I could find one or Google it. But that's why most of the uses are talking about murder or kill, because it's just so much more common. Like I said, people weren't taking sleeping pills and accidentally dying in the Bible. So even though the word itself, covers that accidental death, um, it's not commonly used. It's like the car accident example I'm talking about, Chris. Think about it. If somebody exactly, if you get drunk and you kill somebody who's walking down the street on the highway, they're walking on the highway, God rest the dead, my friend's brother was doing that, and you hit them because you're drunk on the highway, and they die, and they experience the same exact amount of pain as somebody who intentionally sees the person walking on the highway and says, I'm gonna run them over with my car. Premeditated murder. That's just for this hypothetical. Say they experience the exact same amount of pain and they die. At the end of the day, for that person's family, for the result of the victim who died. They suffered the same amount of pain. They died in the same amount of time. They got hit by a car, just in their world, in their perspective. It doesn't matter that in one it was accidental for the driver and in the other it was intentional. So God's going to judge that situation. And depending upon your negligence, who knows how much he's going to hold you accountable. Like morally, inherently, I'm sure most of us think, well, those are two different situations. In our minds, we do view it that way. But at the same time, we also have to remember we're not God and we don't know how he's going to view it. Granted, it seems like he would view it the way we view it to an extent that your intent matters. The fact that you tried to kill somebody matters, but also from a binary perspective, the result is the same. It doesn't matter if I accidentally, gave away the nuclear codes and somebody blew up the world and everybody went extinct. If I was president, it wouldn't matter if I sold them intentionally for $1 billion. At the end of the day, the whole world would be in nuclear war no matter what. So we got to think about, the way God writes his laws. It's consistent if you look at the Torah and the laws. Like I said, if your ox like gores somebody else's ox, if it's intentional or not, like it matters. Sometimes if it's unintentional, there's less of a punishment. So we already do see God's nature doing what we kind of inherently all believe, that intent matters, like putting less of a punishment on the accidental. But we still see God saying, well, you still have to replace that animal. If your animal accidentally or not killed the other person's animal, you still have to replace it. But we also see that God says, if you knew that animal, and I can get these verses if I Google it, but like if you had say you had a pit bull and you knew that pit bull was likely to attack a young kid and you didn't take the proper steps, then God will really hold you accountable in the Old Testament and the law, because you didn't take the necessary steps to make sure your pit bull didn't attack a kid and kill some innocent child. Like in the old law, I can find verses, and I'm sure other people could Google them, where that's in the law. So we already understand what God's nature is if we just read more into the law and see how he deals with the accidental versus the intentional. But when it's real gross negligence, like if you owned a pit bull and you've already knew it was capable of attacking somebody and you didn't take the precautions, and then that pit bull went and killed a child, in the Old Testament the penalty would be the same as if you intentionally killed that person, and you would be put to death too. So I'll find some of those verses, especially if some other people come up here, because that'll help me, take a little break and be able to Google it and not have too much of a time pause. But I'll find those verses because it is relevant. Keep going here. The moral of the story is just be aware that word for murder covers negligent, death too. All right. Okay. One thing I'll say is that the Ten Commandments were the first time we get a precursor of what we call today the Bible, the book of the law. So again, it's the first time anything was written down. So if we want to trace the history of the Bible, we trace it to the 2 stone tablets of the Ten Commandments. Somebody asked you what the first moment was where God started writing, it was the Ten Commandments. Another important thing Moses told the people in Exodus 20:20 here is God's testing you. So Moses said to the people, do not fear, for God has come to test you, that the fear of him may be before you, that you may not sin. So God is showing us that fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and then after that comes understanding, just like Proverbs 9:10 says. So I thought of Proverbs 9:10 when I read this verse, but it's basically Moses is reinforcing, and we'll see God reinforce the same concept, that the fear of the Lord is a good thing, just like fear of losing anything else or fear of anything can be very beneficial to you. If you're fearing death, you're gonna be more careful walking on a cliff. If you're fearing somewhere, you're gonna do things differently. If you're fearing losing your husband or your girlfriend, you're not gonna cheat on them. If you're fearing losing all your money, you're not gonna gamble it all recklessly or buy one item, you're gonna save it. Like fear is not always this bad thing. Sometimes you put a negative connotation on the word fear, but especially fearing God, it's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. It helps us understand. It's just like respecting your mother and father. One of the 10 Commandments: love your mother and father. You know, listen to them. So Proverbs 9:10. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and the knowledge of the Holy One is insight. So the NIV will say the beginning of understanding, but same concept. Obviously just slight difference in translation. So the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and the knowledge of the Holy One is insight. Is the way the ESV says it. So Moses is, putting that concept into the people's hearts because they feared God. So this is something that says a lot about the nature of God in verses 24 and 25. So immediately we see God doesn't ask for uh, a magnificent temple. So God doesn't ask for gold. He doesn't ask for silver. He doesn't ask for anything, spectacular. He's not like the idols of the other nations. God only asked Moses to build an altar to him out of the earth. So look right here. God says, "You shall not make gods of silver to be with me, nor shall you make yourself gods of gold," telling him not to commit idolatry. Um, an altar of earth you shall make for me and sacrifice on it burnt offerings and your peace offerings, your sheep and your oxen. In every place where I cause my name to be remembered, I will come to you and bless you. But think about how much we learn about God just from seeing, an altar of earth. Instead of God asking for the Israelites or Moses to build them this big palace out of gold, it speaks to God's nature. God doesn't care about material things. God isn't superficial. God, is humble. God doesn't care about anything except for your heart. So, well, I won't say anything. God cares about your heart, more than anything, in my opinion. But obviously, God cares about a lot of things more than just one thing. But an altar of earth was something that stood out to me here. And then also the fact that he said, if you make an altar of stone, you shall not build it of hewn stones, for if you wield your tool on it, you profane it. So again, this also speaks to the deep mysteries of God too, and just shows us we don't understand reality. Like, so why would be, and I can think of reasons why, but why would be, using a tool on stones profane the altar and make it not holy before God? It speaks to me about the fact that sound and things like that matter. So if you made a bunch of awkward noises with the tool scraping a rock, that rock then would have a certain frequency or energy, even though we look at it as an inanimate object as a human being. If you really analyze like frequencies and things like that, like a deeper aspect, energy and physical side, we're all atoms or whatever, get into the physics of things, we see God, speaking about that as far as saying, don't make an altar of stone and don't use a tool, just make me an altar of earth here in Exodus. So that's another thing that stood out to me there. Um, Again, just trying to learn from the subtle nuances of the scripture to try to get closer to God, to try to think about God's nature. Like I said, we're blessed that we have a God that doesn't care about material things and only asks for an altar of earth. God doesn't require you to have a palace of gold for him. And also, just to understand God's nature and energy and other things better, like why doesn't God want us to even make an altar to him with a tool? Because you'll profane the altar. It speaks to the deep mysteries of God which human beings can't understand. None of us have the answer why a tool would be profaning the stone. But like I said, I could just throw out my own guesses and speculation on, okay, the energy, the frequency, the sound, the noises, that all matters to God. And I think that's, a decent guess or start, I would say. And we'll go to Deuteronomy 5. Since I'm up here alone, I don't know how long I'll go because it's a lot harder when you don't get a break. It's way more work when you don't get to take a breath as much. So I'm going to slow down a little, guys, and take a breath or two because you guys can all read your Bible in your own time too. And, I'm just giving you, my perspectives on these things. But, I know other people are busy and doing other things. But yeah, Deuteronomy 5 repeats the 10 commandments. So that's one of the things that we'll see in Deuteronomy 5. But what I'll get into is in Deuteronomy 6, where, because we already went over the 10 commandments here. All right. All right, so let's go to the verses here where we get into the greatest commandment. Because, like I said, this is what Jesus quotes in Mark 12. A lot of people don't realize this. They always think the two greatest commandments are just love God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and strength, and love thy neighbor like thyself. If you ask 100 Christians, 99 of them will say that. But if you read Mark 12 carefully, you see that Jesus answered Deuteronomy 6:4 is the greatest commandment. So, hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one. You go to Mark 12, and when the Pharisees, I think it's the Pharisees, not the Sadducees, when they asked Jesus, what's the most important commandment? He says that before he says, love God with all your heart, soul, and mind. So you'll see both these stories here in Matthew and Luke. They only cover the fact that Jesus says in his response, love God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and love thy neighbor like thyself. The Matthew and Luke versions of the same story only say that. But in Mark 12:29 here, you can see, and one of the scribes came up and heard them disputing with one another, and seeing that he answered them well, asked him, which commandment is the most important of all? But what does Jesus answer? Because this is Jesus answering them. Jesus answered, the most important is, hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. So think about that. A lot of people, like I said, 100 Christians on the street, it seems like, and I was one of them, so that's why I can speak to this, because I used to be one of those Christians too that would say, yeah, the two most important commandments are love God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and love thy neighbor like thyself, because that's all you see in Matthew and Luke, and that's also part of his answer here, because the next two verses are those two verses in verse 30 and 31. He does say that. But what does he say before in this version, Mark 12:29? When his first answer is, the most important is, hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one. So they asked him, which is the most important commandment? And this is Jesus' answer. Deuteronomy 6:4. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. So I hope some people that are unfamiliar with this concept remember this, because, like I said, most people don't remember it because it's only in Mark, Matthew, and Luke. I could go to those versions, but it's not there. The only thing that's in the Matthew and Luke versions are love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love thy neighbor like thyself. So only Mark has this, and I hope you guys add it to your toolbox, because when I reread Mark one day and I saw this, I was like, oh, wow, that's Deuteronomy 6:4, and that's where we should all start. It's Jesus' answer. Jesus is our one teacher. If somebody asks you what's the most important commandment before anything else, you should answer what our teacher taught us. You should say, hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. That's what you should say if you're trying to be consistent to following Jesus. That's all I can say. It's an important thing to me, and I would hope other people would take it for what it is and not ignore it just because it doesn't sound as important as the other two to them, you know? So Mark 12:29, it's right there for everybody. But yeah, that speaks to Deuteronomy 6:4. And then if you look at Deuteronomy 6:5, he gets into, well, the text gets into, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. We know Leviticus 19:18 is love thy neighbor like thyself. And we also see, just like I said, it's implied within the Ten Commandments not to covet your neighbor's, property or wife or ox or whatever. So these things are implied, and sometimes they're not explicitly written, but they obviously are implied. So love thy neighbor is implied way before it's written in Leviticus 19:18. But just to show people that, so they understand that when Jesus says, love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love thy neighbor like thyself, he is quoted in the Old Testament. Um, Obviously, he's the Word of God. So these things were provided for the ancient people, the Israelites that established God's covenant. These things were given to they were given to these people. So it's not a foreign concept. Take a look at what else I want to get into as far as Deuteronomy. Like I said, we can just, if we had more people up here, it'd be good to get into the philosophical aspect of the importance of writing things down. It's ah a real deep thought, and this is interesting. I just looked at my notes. A real deep thought I thought about, and this is kind of like when you used to smoke weed. It's like, you hit the blunt and think extra hard about something, type of like, you could see it as a meme nowadays. But you know, how do we process what language God wrote the Ten Commandments down in? Because he uh, he wrote it in a language that the Israelite people understood clearly. So was the Hebrew language, and this is where I'm not a scholar, so bear with me, people. I apologize that I'm not, more informed on this topic. Again, this is just a show I, prepared an hour or two for, not something I spent, a month or a week on, or my lifetime on, or my college thesis on. So, but think about it. It says God wrote down the Ten Commandments on two stone tablets, but in order for the people to read what he wrote, he would have to write it in a language they understood. So God wasn't creating a brand new language, either that or he did create a brand new language, and Moses had to teach the people what the language was. So that's a real interesting part of, if you just want to like be philosophical and think about things, think about the fact that either God wrote the Ten Commandments, the two tablets of stone, in a language that everybody already understood. So it was a language that already existed. Hebrew already existed somewhere. Or he, made a brand new language, and Moses taught the people to read it. So that's where we can get the questions about, Paleo Hebrew versus, the modern day Hebrew, or whatever you want to go with it. Clearly I'm assuming the Hebrew people were writing things down in Egypt and prior, but was that the same script? Did God write the same Hebrew script, or was that a more ancient Hebrew script? And then God, because we know the tablets, there's God Himself writing. So did God create a new variation of the script Himself, and then tell Moses to teach the Hebrew people? It's not written in the Bible, so we're never going to get the answer. But it's just one of those things I thought was an interesting thought, because it's, if you look really philosophically at it, and I know you're not supposed to overly be philosophical because it can lead to your demise and take away from your faith. I'm just saying it's an interesting thing to think about. You know, did God just write it, like I said, in a way they already understood, or did He give them a newer, more divine language, or divine version of the language they already pretty much knew and told Moses to teach it, or a brand new language? Interesting thought process. But All right, and we'll just point out how God, wants fear of the Lord in order for people to learn His word. So that goes along with humility. Some people will argue against fear of the Lord because they'll read that one verse in John, one of the 1 John, 2 John, 3 John, where it's talking about there is no fear in perfect love. That's a hard thing. Like I said, sometimes the Bible to me has contradictions, but not in a negative connotation way, just concepts that you need to apply, and take each for what it is in the context it is. But yeah, fear of the Lord is very important throughout the Old Testament, and I think just in general. If the people feared Jesus, they wouldn't have ever put him on the cross, would they? So if you fear God, you're going to stay away from making a lot of errors you would make if you didn't. So Deuteronomy 5:29. Oh, that they had such a heart as this always, to fear me and to keep all my commandments, that it might go well with them and with their descendants forever. And it says sons, but some translations made it descendants just because obviously sons implies both male and female. But we know the Hebrew language sometimes can be written in the masculine or feminine form, or the plural form, or the singular form. So this is obviously probably plural masculine, but some translations just clarified it, since we all know that people aren't just going to have sons forever. Um, so yeah, I mean, these are some things that are important. If you think about the Ten Commandments, this is right after the people said only to have Moses speak to God. So if you want to know why God's saying that He's happy with them right now, and what their decision was to only have Moses speak, it's because God was happy with that thought that the Hebrews had. So right here you see it in verse 24. And you said, behold, the Lord our God has shown us his glory and greatness, and we have heard his voice out of the midst of the fire. This day we have seen God speak with man, and man is still alive. Now therefore, why should we die? So this is the Israelites talking. They're telling Moses, we only want you to talk to him. For this great fire will consume us. If we hear the voice of the Lord our God anymore, we shall die. For who is there of all flesh that has heard the voice of the living God speaking out of the midst of the fire as we have, and has still lived? Go near and hear all that the Lord our God will say, and speak to us all that the Lord our God will speak to you, and we will hear and do it. So this is the Israelite people saying, only you go to God, Moses. And that's, like I said, where God was happy with them for making that decision. So that's something that kind of was interesting to me, because there's also verses in Isaiah where God says, some people say, keep away from me, you're too holy for me, and God says these type of people are smoking my nostrils. So it's kind of interesting to me that in this context where they're recognizing Moses as their leader, and they don't all want to go near God, that God is happy and pleased with it. But I can also see it because God had already ordained Moses to be their leader, to lead them out of Egypt. So obviously, it's like many things in life, got more than one variable going on in order for God to come to the conclusion He does. All right. Anyways, guys, since Jamie's got a stream and other people aren't on here, and we already did 6 hours earlier in the day. I'm gonna keep this one short. When other people come on, we'll get into the other instances of Joshua, Josiah, and Nehemiah and Ezra when the Book of the Law is found, and I can even prepare more for the shows, and get more historical information and just verses together, prepared for those shows. So that's how I'm going to go about this, just because my voice is kind of hurting. I don't know. It's like I said, it's a lot harder, and it's easy to do a 12-hour stream when you got, a couple people up here to help you. But, it's just you up here and you're just talking, you're just giving a speech for an hour. Yeah, my voice is literally hurting, so I want to be able to relax and probably just read and, try to read my Bible and find some more information for more shows and, just to learn and casually enjoy my night and read the Bible or watch TV, whatever I choose to do. So I appreciate your time also, Sherry. Thank you for watching. And again, always humbled to have people watch. And I'm blessed that this channel has a core group of people. And I'm glad you guys have fellowship within the chat, that you guys are all, people that know each other and help each other, pray for each other. We're blessed to have that type of dynamic and community. I hope it grows, but I'm also, glad that we have the core group we have. So I wouldn't trade the core group we have for a million viewers. I rather have, I don't care. I'm never trying to monetize this channel anyways. But yeah, I liked what you said earlier, Chris. That we could get into that sometime too, about hell, man. That was a topic we could talk about for a couple hours. Like I said, I like to have more people up here just so I can take a breath and also so I can learn more and hear other people's perspectives. Because, obviously, if I'm just up here by myself, I'm just going to be going on what I know already and what I have prepared. But more than that, I don't know. My voice is kind of actually hurting right now, so I'm going to take it easy. I don't know if it's because we did a 6-hour show earlier or what, but yeah, that everybody should check out Chris's video. He did a real good video on hell. I guess we can show Chris's 2-minute video for people just for some last content. I don't think Chris, since he's in the chat here, is going to flag me for showing his video, but I thought it was a really interesting thing on hell. Or you guys could go to Chris's channel and watch it, this table talk. That way he gets the views. So if you guys want a real good video on hell, I could play it here, but you could go on Chris's channel, and that way Chris gets the views. So subscribe to his channel. But this was really good, Chris. I liked this topic. It's only a 2-minute video, guys. But he talks about hell, and it's really deep, and it's really awesome. And about fearing the Lord, like we were just talking about, and being humble before God. And it's a good biblical lesson for anybody. I mean, I'd play it here, but I want people to go to his channel so he gets the views too. But I don't know if Chris wants me to play it here too or not, but it's a good video. It'll really provoke you to think. So if you got an extra 2 minutes and you wanted, all right, I'll play it right here for people too then, because Chris said why not. But yeah, everybody subscribe to his channel too. But yeah, we'll play this quick just so you guys get another 2 minutes and I can take a breath. So yeah, like I said, ponder what Chris said here. It's really good thoughts on hell and humbleness.
You've humbled yourself to understand. I was thinking about how people don't like to believe that someone can burn in hell for eternity. And I actually think if you humble yourself to such a belief, that you open yourself up to great wisdom. Because by saying that that's what you're worthy of, that's what your sin is worthy of, then you've humbled yourself to understand that. It's not really so much about, some people think, oh, how could God be so cruel? But the thing is, you're the one who has been so wicked, and that's the proper way to see it. And I was thinking, about how humbleness is the key to everything. And no one humbled themselves more than Jesus humbled himself. And Jesus is also the wisest and greatest. And some people don't like to think about how, well, I just committed this little sin. It's not as bad as being a mass murderer. But if you humble yourself down to thinking that little sin is just as bad, you will actually gain great wisdom. The mass murderer can't humble himself any lower because he's did a mass murder, right? But if you humble yourself down to recognizing what you think is a little sin is just as great as that, then God will lift you up to a greater wisdom. That's what I believe. And so, I mean, that's one reason to think, oh, well, I didn't do this bad, and I got to humble myself down to looking at myself like a serial killer. But I honestly think if you do humble yourself down to that, God will lift you up higher in understanding and help you understand some really unbelievable things. So that's it.
Well, I think we'll all agree.
Sorry, I've never seen a diamond in the friends.
I think we'll all agree Chris's visual concept was terrible there. And you do have to at least put some flowers on the table, or put your camera out the window, or get a sunset, or some grass, or a mountain, or a tree, or do something better than the table next time, Chris. But no, the thoughts itself in that 2.5 minute video, everybody, I hope you guys appreciated what he was saying there, because I really thought about it. And
humbled yourself.
It's called Table Talk on Chris's channel. I really pondered it, and I thought it was a great perspective on hell. So if you're not subscribed to Chris's channel, check him out. I know you guys, are all looking for more content. Check it out. What's going on, Mike? I was actually about to wrap up. I saw Jamie had something going on here. So my voice is kind of hurting, honestly, because I just talked for the last hour 15. But yeah, I would have done a longer stream if I didn't have to just talk for the last hour 15. But no, like I said, it was re-listen to Chris's video. I don't know if the sound was good on that one, but also just so he gets the views. But think about it and realize the deep lessons he's talking about there. Because I could talk about what Chris just talked about there in that video for the next 3 hours if my voice wasn't hurting. So yeah, Mike, you got here a little late. I wish you had come in the beginning and helped me out, because I could have taken a breath or two. But I'm kind of worn out now because I just talked for the last hour 17. So we'll see. I don't know. Maybe Jamie, I don't know if his stream's still going or not, but yeah, we'll play it by ear, guys. Like I said, my voice really is sort of hurting right now. Like I said, I don't know if it's because we did the 6-hour stream earlier or what, but just talking for an hour straight right now is the problem. But yeah, we can get into the other subjects that I had prepared about the Book of the Law being found, or we can dive into Chris's topic of hell, which I think is that's a 2-minute video, but like I said, it can turn into a 2-hour discussion easily, because it's not just what you believe about hell, it's about God's nature and how hell is just. So the people that want to say hell is this cruel, evil thing God did, they're not understanding that it's the only natural reaction to, if you were to deny God's goodness, what you would deserve. And if you humble yourself to the point to think, well, wow, if I was dumb enough, wicked enough, evil enough to deny or spit in the face of God, who offered me the easiest, freest gift of love, mercy, compassion for eternity, hell would be a just consequence. And if you in your heart, instead of being resentful, say, well, God is cruel because of that consequence, if you humble yourself to acknowledge the divinity of God and say, well, I would deserve that. It's like if somebody offered you to live in their house and they gave you a bank account with $1 million or $1 billion. Let's say $1 billion. They gave you the keys to a mansion, and all you had to do is treat their son with love and respect, who also lived in the house, and also, treat other people decently as you would want to be treated, and you turn that down, then you would deserve to be homeless. You would deserve whatever consequence came. If you ended up homeless, living on a street corner somewhere, because you didn't want to just treat that person's son with love and respect, and you didn't want to honor the owner of the house and just treat other people decently as you would want to be treated, then you would deserve to be homeless, versus the fact you could have had that mansion. So if the person that offered you the mansion is the same person that made you homeless, i.e., heaven or hell, is that person cruel to say, no, you wouldn't honor my son, so now you're homeless? Is that a cruel person, or were they the most generous being, essence, love, kind, you know, force in the world, God? And you were the fool. You were the one who made the error. You were the evil. You were the wicked one who couldn't even treat the son or other people halfway decently, just as you would want to be treated. And you're the one who gave up the mansion and the $1 billion for your own mistakes. So that's kind of just to get the ball rolling, where I could start with what Chris talked about in that video. I, like I said, could talk about it in 100 different levels in 100 different ways for hours. So, yeah, I don't know. But anyways, I appreciate you guys. It's good stuff. So check out more videos. Mike's got a channel too. So I didn't know this till yesterday either. So everybody check out Mike's channel. It's the None Your Biz channel. So I'll show Mike's channel too. So this is Chris's channel, Chris Lucas, Protestant Live. And then Mike's channel is None Your Biz. So, he always has his name. But everybody subscribe to Mike's channel too. So if you haven't done it yet, because I just did it yesterday, subscribe to Mike's channel also. And he's got some good videos and breakdowns on there. Obviously, you guys are familiar with Mike, so you know the type of content he's going to have. And he's got more videos than me, so some of them are shorts and just his life, but also a lot of Bible breakdowns and, Apocrypha, some stuff I don't have. So check out Mike's channel too. There you go. So you're getting channels right in front of my face, Mike. So you're doing something right. If you promote it, they will come. So yeah, if you want to do a nice thing, everybody, just type in None Your Biz and type in Chris Lucas Protestant Live and subscribe to both the people's channels. It's free. You guys are good people. You'll like the content anyways. You'll find good videos that you'll learn from, and that's just all loving your neighbor like thyself in the basic form. Just if you had your own YouTube channel like a lot of us do. Diane said I just subscribed to see that little bird in action. Yeah, like I said, Mike's channel's probably got some good entertainment. Like I said, it's not just his educational videos. So if you're bored one night, I'm sure you can go down a wormhole and watch some videos for an hour. But so yeah, just do a nice thing if you can, guys, and that's it. But anyways, love you guys. Take it easy, and God willing, we'll try to do it again soon. So take it easy, and if I feel better in an hour or two, maybe I'll jump back on, but I do need to rest my voice. This is a lot harder when you're up here by yourself and you just got to talk. An hour and a half feels like a 6-hour stream when you're the only one talking. So take it easy, everybody, and God bless.